Welcome to S&P Knowledge Series. In this episode, let's discuss on the topic, Global Supply Chains Integrating Global plus Local, Shifting to Glocal. Authored by S.N. Panigrahi, Certified PMP, Authorized Training Partner ATP, Instructor PMI, USA, Fellow Institution of Engineers, FI, Chartered Engineer, GST and International Business and Projects Consultant, Corporate Trainer, Mentor and Author, National Council Member, IIMM. Introduction. Global supply chain advanced due to globalization and increasing free trade among countries. Globalization undoubtedly has many advantages and benefits of better access and integration of supplies at global level. However, globalization and global supply chains are more prone to supply chain disruptions. COVID pandemic's impact on global trade and supplies is so devastating that it has exposed the fragility of the supply chain and proved to be a real test of corporate ingenuity, resilience and flexibility to face the crisis. So, businesses have started looking for offshore to nearshore and local sourcing. In this article, let's discuss on concept of Glocal, a combination of global and local, and how it embraces global mindset, reach and access, but also accommodate and promote the values, cultures, ideals, interests and needs of the local businesses. Now let's discuss about globalization. Global supply chain advanced due to globalization and increasing free trade among countries. In the economic context, globalization refers to the process characterized by liberalization. Borderless globe opens up new markets with free trade flow of capital and financial products, investments, goods, services, technology, information and human capital across national borders with increased interaction, integration and interdependence among the nations around the globe to foster easy access to foreign resources, better exchange, movement and cooperation of businesses, organizations, and countries to build economic partnerships for mutual benefit and facilitate common good, based on competitive advantage of each participating nations or regions. Globalization enables access to global talent, materials, and products that were otherwise out of reach. Globalization can enrich business processes by offering companies a wider, more abundant pool of resources to pick from. Cross-border information flows may promote growth. Globalization encompasses growth on a worldwide scale. In the past few decades, we have witnessed growing globalization as more countries and regions of the world become intertwined politically, culturally, and economically. National competitive advantage. Globalization evolved and advanced on the premises of basic concept of comparative advantage, which is defined as ability of a country to produce and sell goods and services on an international scale more efficiently and inexpensively than another. As technology, infrastructure, transportation systems, and communication systems, economic, political, and cultural exchanges have improved, competition among different countries has soared. Globalization leads to increased competition. Competition in global business environment occurs when different nations offer interchangeable services or products or other resources. National competitiveness is a country's ability to sustain and increase its share of international markets and at the same time to improve its people's quality of life. Among governments, there is a growing tendency to experiment with various policies intended to promote national competitiveness, from efforts to manage exchange rates to new measures to manage trade to policies to relax antitrust. Attributes of a national competitive advantage. National competitive advantage is measured by a set of factors, policies, and institutions that determine a country's level of productivity and competitiveness. There are four broad attributes of a national competitive advantage: factor conditions, the factors of production, such as natural resources, skilled labor or infrastructure; demand conditions, the nature of home market or domestic demand, related and supporting industries, the presence or absence in the nation of supplier industries and other related industries that are internationally competitive; firm strategy, structure, and rivalry, the conditions in the nation governing how companies are created, organized, and managed, as well as the nature of domestic rivalry. According to prevailing thinking, government policies, institutions, infrastructure, innovation, technology development and absorption, macroeconomic stability, health and primary education, higher education and training, market size, market conditions and efficiency, labor market efficiency, labor cost, financial and capital market, interest rates, exchange rates, economies of scale, countries' overall business networks and supporting industries are the most potent determinants of competitiveness. It is a relative concept. It is an approximation of a country's ability to grow and to compete with other countries for human capital, investments, and other resources. Shortcomings or flip side of globalization. On the flip side, it develops unequal economic growth, exploits cheaper labor markets, causes job displacement, increases potential supply distortions in some extreme dangerous circumstances, and many more as mentioned below. Markets opened up, captured by advanced economies. Multinational corporations are gaining advantage, showing their mighty power as a result of globalization. Smaller businesses are being faced with constant threat and caught by larger and multinational giants. Heavy dumping of products from developed countries, trade inflows far exceeding outflows. Traditional products, practices, cultures are slowly being vanished. Growing inequality, unbalanced and uneven development among nations. Low cost or cheap labor marketplaces are being exploited and oppressed. Globalization has failed to protect workers and human rights. Disproportionate increasing of the unemployment rate, shift of job markets. Trade imbalance, many countries fallen into debt trap, imports exceeding exports. Environmental depletion, excess exploitation of natural resources from underdeveloped and developing nations. Trade distortions, war, pandemics, unfair trade practices, trade barriers etc. may disturb the flow of supplies. Cyber attacks, information leakage, national security threats, conflicts between nations, terrorism. Financial instability due to volatile foreign capital flows and threats to the global environment. Compulsive following of certain compliances forcibly imposed which may be against the interests of native country. Global supply chain disruption. Globalization and global supply chains are more prone to supply chain disruptions. A supply chain disruption is any sudden change or crisis, be it local or global, that severely impact the supply chain activities, processes and operations. Supply chain disruption is defined as a major breakdowns in the production or distribution, supply and other major functions of a supply chain that challenges your business's ability to plan, source, make, deliver and or sell products and other transactions when an external force acts upon beyond the control of the business. The adverse impacts of supply chain disruptions may in certain cases overshoot the benefits of globalization. Global supply chain disruptions, major causes. Consequences of supply chain disruptions. In the aftershock of the COVID-19 epidemic, followed by many other events like Suez Canal supply crisis, Russia-Ukraine war, escalation of tensions and disputes between China-Taiwan, Cold Trade war between USA and China etc. disrupted and continue to upset the supply chain, leading to risks in terms of delivery, quality, costs, service performance, supplier and customer relationships. These supply chain disruptions reflect as decreased productivity, increased costs, non-availability of inputs and raw materials, delayed deliveries or non-deliveries, stockouts and loss of revenue, as well as loss of customer trust, rising customer dissatisfaction, cash flow and financial problems, closure of businesses or insolvency, and more, and many economic fallouts. Global to look for local. The coronavirus pandemic and subsequent other events are forcing companies to make a trade-off between efficiency and resilience in global supply chains. These adverse and unfavorable events triggered disruption of the global supply chain, hampered factory operations and sown chaos in global supply chains, damaged many economies around the world. We have seen shortage and stock-out situations for many items including very essentials like food, groceries, household supplies, medical, personal protective equipments PPE, clothes and so on. With lead time issues, uncertain demand and deliveries, all the supply chain targets and measures gone awry. GOFT. Regulations, restrictions for mobility, lockdowns, increased border controls and customs regulations result in longer wait times, and lack of capacity for long-haul and last-mile fulfillment etc. Apart from overall economic slowdown, short supplies, labor non-availability, health issues and severe financial crisis created extreme challenges of keeping the businesses running and keep them stable. Pandemic's impact on global trade is so devastating that it has exposed the fragility of the supply chain and proved to be a real test of corporate ingenuity, resilience, and flexibility to face the crisis. So, businesses have started looking for offshore to nearshore and local sourcing to offset and counterbalance the adverse impacts of global sourcing and the associated supply disruptions. Among businesses, there is a growing tendency to explore and experiment with various policies and strategies intended to promote and strengthen local competitiveness. Advantages of localization. Localization has advantages of developing and caring for domestic industries and local business community. Though it is termed as protectionism, creating entry barriers to foreign entities, providing unreasonable shelter to domestic industry, it provides greater self-reliance, self-determination, independence of decision-making. Some of the major advantages of localization are: encourages local suppliers, develops local competitive advantage. Localization ensures less distortions in case of supply chain disruptions as there is limited movement of people and goods in a limited local area. Better utilization of local resources and value creation locally. Local resource engagements and creation of better employment prospects for local talent. Balanced development of local economy and growth. Avoid skewed economic growth on misconceived, not the true sources concept of competitive advantage and concentration of development in few pockets of developed nations. Reduced dependency on supplies from overseas. Saves foreign currency outflow, strengthens balance of payment position of the native country. Decrease of trade barriers, avoids trade restrictions, constraints between nations. Creates a long-term business ecosystem with supporting supply bases in the local and native country. Shorter distances for shipments and transportation, so less consumption of fossil fuel, as a result lesser emissions and pollutions and greater environmental concerns. Balanced approach. Global plus local equals Glocal. Like there is two sides of a coin, either globalization and localization both have advantages and disadvantages. In the name of globalization, allowing free entry of all for all with boundaryless borders making home turf a dumping ground is not a good economics. Skewed and concentric economic growth with too much specialization in certain regions or countries is antithesis of liberalization. Corona exposed weak and fragile points of globalization. Semiconductor chip shortage reaching crisis point worldwide really exposed as a finer example of shortcoming of globalization, calling for now to localize. Similarly, inward-looking, closed economy with entry barriers and too much controls on foreign entry and excessive protection to domestic industry naturally limits and constrains growth and progress. The opposite of economic globalization, or free market trade across borders, is localization, a protectionism, an economic policy that attempts to protect domestic businesses from foreign competition and labor markets, usually by imposing trade barriers like tariffs and restrictions. Both extremes of globalization and localization have consequential dangers to damage and jeopardize the economies. Rationally, balancing both globalization and localization proves beneficial for the nations by taking advantages of globalization through liberal and free trade with some limitations and cautions, and at the same time taking due consideration of the domestic industry and business by strengthening them and reasonably protecting and sheltering native industry from foreign corp is a wise and balanced approach. The term Glocal combines the words global and local. Embracing Glocal means that you have a global mindset, reach and access, but you also accommodate and promote the values, cultures, ideals, interests and needs of your local businesses. Glocal, a concept of self-reliance with global access. Glocal, a concept of self-reliance with local strengths and global access, trading freedom and liberal integration. Self-reliance is the ability and independence to do things and make decisions by a nation on its own, without coercive and forcible gravity from other nations or any organizations to influence the key decisions. 4 mutually reinforcing factors, 4 C's, that determine a country's self-reliance. Commitment. The degree to which a country's laws, policies, actions, and informal governance mechanisms, such as cultures and norms, support progress towards self-reliance, and capacity. How far a country has come in its ability to manage its own development journey across the dimensions of political, social, and economic development, including the ability to work across these sectors. Collaboration. Effective global collaboration requires defining and aligning the country's vision and goals, addressing trade-related concerns, creating partner relationships, engaging, cooperating and coordination on mutually beneficial practices and creating an environment of mutual trust. Compliance. Complying and adapting globally accepted norms, protocols, conventions, environmental laws, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, social obligations, sustainable development and other ecosystems governing national interests and global norms. Glocal aligns the local aspirations and development with global integration without sacrificing self-reliance, self-sufficiency based on local strengths, independence, autonomy of native nations. Glocal. Atmanirbhar Abhiyan. Glocal, in essence, is aligned to Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, a call to the nation for self-reliance, by our visionary Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, exhibiting his leadership ascent during critical crisis situation of COVID. This concept of Atmanirbhar, self-reliance, envisioned to be built on 5 pillars. Those are the key areas to strengthen the nation. Economy. Infrastructure. A system driven by technology and forward-looking policies. Demography. And economic demand. The vision of Modinomics is perform, reform and transform, reflecting true vision to strengthen the nation's economy through self-reliance. Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan lays strong foundations for raising our economic growth and long-term sustainability through our strengths focused on land, labor, liquidity and laws. Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. A call to the nation for self-reliance. 5 pillars of self-reliance. Economy. Infrastructure. System. Demography. Demand. Our local strengths are focused on land, labor, liquidity and laws. Vocal for local. Prime Minister Narendra Modi pitched for the use of products manufactured in the country, saying the novel coronavirus outbreak has taught us the importance of local manufacturing, local market and local supply chain. In times of crisis, this local has fulfilled our demand, this local has saved us. Local is not just the need, it is our responsibility also, he said in his address to the nation. The Prime Minister said Indian has to become vocal for their local, not only to buy local products, but also to promote them proudly. In essence, we must make the local as a mantra of our life. The global brands were sometimes also very local like this. But when people started using them, started promoting them, branding them, felt proud of them, they became global from local products, he said. Five things to build a self-reliant India. While delivering the inaugural address at CII Annual Session 2020, Getting Growth Back, through video conference, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the 2nd of June, 2020, listed 5 things that will help India mitigate the impact of the coronavirus pandemic and bring back the country to a high growth trajectory. The theme of the annual conference was Building India for a New World. Lives, livelihood, growth to bring India on the path of rapid development. 5 things are very important to build a self-reliant India. Intent, inclusion, investment, infrastructure and innovation, the PM said. Conclusion. Global supply chain advance due to globalization and increasing free trade among countries. Globalization undoubtedly has many advantages and benefits of better access and integration of supplies at global level. However, globalization and global supply chains are more prone to supply chain disruptions. COVID pandemic's impact on global trade and supplies is so devastating that it has exposed the fragility of the supply chain and proved to be a real test of corporate ingenuity, resilience and flexibility to face the crisis. So, businesses have started looking for offshore to nearshore and local sourcing. Glocal, a concept of self-reliance with local strengths and global access, trading freedom and liberal integration with limitations. That means Glocal is a combination of globalization and localization, thinking global and acting local, developing, supporting local industry and business to attain the global level. Developing self-sufficiency, self-reliance, strong domestic industry, increase competitiveness, independence to nations with collective cooperation among the nations, global reach and access, knowledge and information sharing, exchange of goods and service etc. are the Glocal mantras. These will ensure healthy growth of the nations, collaborative engagement among the nations, mutual cooperation and trust. Do you find the presentation informative and useful? If yes, then click like and also subscribe the channel for free to receive updates. Thank you. For more details contact SN Panigrahi at the below contact details.